They're among some of the most divisive, dispiriting and draconian features of COVID-19. Domestic border restrictions that have torn families apart, stopped sick people from getting the treatment they need and crippled businesses reliant on the free movement of goods and people across the country. Now they're causing yet another headache for ordinary people. According to the Insurance Council of Australia, hard borders are blocking insurance claim assessors from travelling interstate, leading to huge delays for families hit by severe weather events, which, as we know at this time of the year, come thick and fast and only increase. Of course, we've got the fire season upon us very shortly. Andrew Hall is the Chief Executive Officer of the Insurance Council and joins me now from Sydney. Andrew, this is a really big story. I mean, it's one that's talked about in homes and barbecues around small businesses, but it's only just now, I think, focusing the mind of policymakers at state and federal level. Give us a sense of the scale of the issue you're talking about.
Well, thanks, Peter. And I just heard Paul Kelly talking about the end of the year where the nation's mood can change. And we do forget at that time of the year, we also have major events. Often we have cyclones, floods and bushfires. And when those events happen, we actually require a nationalised workforce to be able to respond. So we're very worried that as we're going into this next period, the coming November, December, January, February, when the likelihood of an extreme event will happen, we may be hamstrung in being able to move the kind of people that we normally need to move into place to help people recover quickly from the event. We need to put insurance assessors on the ground. They do things like provide short-term accommodation, cash grants and that sort of thing to people to get them quickly into alternative accommodation, food on the table and those sorts of things. So we're very worried at the moment. We've had a number of storms in the last week in South Australia, had a particularly bad one which was declared a catastrophe. Melbourne last weekend had an event as well. So we are keeping up with the claims at the moment, but there are some severe knock-on effects happening with these border closures.
Oh, look, spot on. And I know down in Victoria, something around 8,000 people still now, particularly in Mornington Peninsula way, have not got power tonight, a week on from those storms last weekend. You've done some economic modelling about the impact of the delay to the claims process. How much is it costing us?
Well, if we had a delay in an event like Cyclone Debbie, which happened in 2017, of around a week, it would cost around $600 million. And what we are seeing is by the time we get around negotiating with all the various different state authorities about how to shift people from one state to another, we're losing critical days. And we can't let that happen. As we go into this summer season, we need to have an agreed protocol with all the states that once an event happens, we can move quickly to get people approved, get them across the border and get them on the ground. Because when an event happens, it literally can be too large for that community to be able to respond. We need to bring in builders from interstate. We need to bring in engineers, insurance assessors and the like to be able to help that local community recover. And we're seeing with these border closures, particularly Western Australia and Queensland, who rely quite heavily on workforces from Melbourne and Sydney, those workforces currently are cut off to them. So we really, really hope that nothing terrible happens in the next few months, both in Queensland and WA, because moving people up there is going to prove to be extremely difficult.
Tell you what, if I lost the roof of my house, COVID would be the last of my worries. So I think, we've got to have some, I don't know if you know if the National Cabinet's sitting anymore. We haven't heard from that for a while, but we need some agreed guidelines. Let's go to a related issue, because this has been a bit of a talking point with people I know. We're told the cost of travel insurance is set to jump by, they say, around 10% as we start to now move in and out of Australia. I'm told, though, one of the problems with the travel insurance, Andrew, is not that you won't get cancellation insurance if your flight gets cancelled because of a COVID event. That's likely to be in policies. But what's problematic is getting hospital and medical cover. If you're overseas, let's say, you happen to get seriously ill from COVID, you spend a couple of weeks on a ventilator in countries where we don't have health agreements, that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. What can you tell us?
Yeah, travel insurance is really important, and as we're bouncing back to go overseas again, people simply must take travel insurance. We forget when we've spent so much time here at home in Australia that when you go overseas, it doesn't even need to be COVID. You can fall over and sprain your ankle and end up with with a hospital bill that could be absolutely crippling. So it's critically important you take out travel insurance. What you need to do is check, first of all, the country you're going to. Some countries are requiring that your travel insurance policy has COVID medical coverage. Those policies are available, so do shop around and do see what's available. It is a case that you do need to pick up and have a close read of the terms and conditions and the exclusions in your travel policy and think about what could go wrong for you and your circumstance. I'd say the first thing you need to do is get vaccinated. It's the best protection against COVID anyone can take, and particularly if you're going to go overseas where COVID is far more prevalent than it is at the moment in Sydney or Melbourne. But I would, given probably only Sydney and Melbourne can go overseas, but I would absolutely get vaccinated, and then once you're travelling, make sure that your policy covers you for if you catch COVID and you are delayed because you can't board a flight, it could cover your accommodation costs. And hopefully, if you're vaccinated, you won't require that hospitalisation.
It's good to know that you can actually get that medical cover, because I'd heard varying stories that you couldn't get COVID medical cover, but that's good. Just before we go, we had devastating bushfires not so long ago now, 12 plus months, 2 years in some situations on from that. Have all of those claims roughly been sorted? I mean, are people back to rebuilding their lives?
The bushfire claims are largely settled. There's a small handful, as I understand it, that are still going through a process, but they're close to 100% settled. In fact, the rate in which insurers closed out claims for the 2019 bushfires was one of the fastest rates following a mass-scale natural disaster in years. And I think that reflected the fact that a lot of people opted for cash settlements. They decided that they wanted to think about their lives and where they lived and how they would move forward. And one of the big lessons we've seen out of the 2019 bushfires, which as we go into the summer season, I'd really encourage people to think about, is make sure you've got the right level of cover, particularly with COVID. COVID's pushed up the price of building supplies. So if you think your house is worth $500,000, let's say, to replace, you could easily add another 25% on top of that at the moment, given that all the inputs and the labour and everything is going up. So it was a lesson out of the bushfire season of 2019 that underinsurance was an issue. As we go into this summer season, just check your sum insured and ask yourself the question, is that the amount of money I would actually need to rebuild my house if the worst happened?
All right, Andrew Hall. Got to get organised, don't we? Thank you for your time. Insurance Council CEO there, Andrew Hall.